We got two special guests tonight.
Hey, everybody. That is Gary Smith.
Hello there.
That is Kaz Kenny.
Kapow!
Wait a minute. That's not Kaz.
You know, Kaz, you are what you eat.
And I am Eddie Bramble, and this is episode 42 of the Blackwater's Edge podcast. Well, Kaz isn't going to start us off with this week's fishing report. He's out this week. He has actually been in close contact with somebody with coronavirus, so he's sitting this one out and awaiting his test results.
Quarantining.
Yeah, that's right. He's quarantined this week, but yeah. So no fishing report this week, but we're gonna trudge on without Kaz. So, but this week we're gonna jump right into our special guest this week. So we've got Doug Wigfield here. Doug, how you doing this week?
That's a matter of opinion. I had something new happen this week.
Yeah.
My old kidney stones seem to have acted up. And I spent some time in pain this past week. So anyways.
That'll knock anybody down.
If you see me jump up and run out, I'm headed to the hospital. If I stay here, I'm in good.
That's right. So hopefully no jumping up this week. Oh, man. So for anybody who doesn't know who you are, why don't you just give a brief background of who you are and how you got into Sicadeer?
Well, man, that's a long story, or it could be a short story.
We'll take the middle ground.
To try to make it short, just an old regular guy that was born and raised up in Western Maryland, and decided early on, when someone said, "What do you want to do for a living?" I want to be a wildlife biologist. Well, I hung right in there and went to school, Eastern Kentucky University, and got my degree, and ended up coming back to good old Maryland, and it was tough getting a job, but I hung right in there and got a job as a wildlife biologist. So down to the shore I came from Western Maryland, and I've been here ever since. And I guess one of the main things that got me interested with Sicadeer, besides that critter being here,
Right,
where I was at, was the fact that up in Western Maryland, I seem to have liked to hunt critters that I could call to. And if it wasn't a squirrel and pushing the old bellows or puddle ducks on the Potomac River and stuff, it was turkeys, and that's where I really fell in love with the wild turkey. But coming down here, all of a sudden, what do we have here but Sicadeer? And what are they? Our most vocal deer.
that's it. They can talk to anybody.
Yeah.
And wow, did I get excited when that happened. So anyways, that's how I got interested in the vocal Sicadeer, being a wildlife biologist, wearing that hat, and also wearing the hat of a hunter, and getting into Sika hunting. And part of that for me, like I just said, was calling.
The vocalization.
When they decided that they wanted to respond to that call, that excited me.
So, of course, turkeys didn't have many of them here back then. Now there are, but back then there weren't many.
That's right. And I guess that's one advantage for being an old dude like myself, working for DNR way back when. I was the first biologist here on the Eastern Shore that released wild turkeys on the Eastern Shore. And we started in Somerset County and moved to Wicomico and Worcester County and Dorchester County and right on up.
I didn't realize you were involved in that too.
So you guys got busted. Sitting in a deer stand. There's your man right there. He's the one that turned them loose.
So anyways, I saw where Kaz put something on there about if someone can guess what Doug's favorite animal is, and everyone was going to say the Sicadeer, and it was the wild turkey. And the first guy that got on there said wild turkey. So anyways, yeah, love the wild turkey, and there again, there's another critter that you can vocalize
really talk to.
And have a good time with.
So that's how you really got started into creating the Sitka Seducer, was because of your love for that vocalization of the animals.
It really was. And what happened way back when, DNR realized, hey, we have a Sika deer here, and it can cause problems and is causing problems for farmers and stuff. And we need to pay attention to that type of thing. But then, and I forget what year it was, but there was sort of a change in attitude in that, hey, we've got a pretty neat critter here. And maybe if someone's going to come here, maybe we ought to tell them about this critter. And they found old Doug Wigfield wasn't afraid to put together a PowerPoint program. And I went around and did PowerPoint programs about Sika deer, life history, habits, habitat, all that kind of stuff. And did that in a number of places. And then DNR thought that was good enough over 2 years or whatever. That was good. And during that time, I had found out about vocalizations, and I made sure it was all right, but I wanted to continue to do that, except I turned them into Sika deer hunting seminars and programs. And there I went around to different places like Bass Pro and Cabela's and those kind of places doing seminars. And it was there with my love of calling that I would always take a piece of that seminar out and say, hey, these guys are vocal deer and they respond to vocalizations, and maybe you should have and utilize callers in your bag of tricks for Sika hunting. And at that time there weren't any callers except the old hoochie mamas, right. And I had that, and of course I'd hoochie mama a couple times. And I had a diaphragm, of course, being a turkey hunter, and I'd call using a diaphragm and could bugle with it and the whole bit, and encourage people to try calling because it does work. Does it work all the time? No. Heavens, no. Doesn't work all the time.
I've never seen a hunting tactic that does.
But it works. And I encourage people to do that. And people that would come up to me afterwards and talk about it, they would say, thanks for the encouragement. And this is after they came back the second year and said, but we never did anything. You need to make one. And it wasn't until about 3 or 4 years of being told, hey, you need to make one, I started thinking about it. And I didn't have that kind of ability, but I thought I have the wherewithal to try to pull together that kind of ability. And that's where I came up with the Sika seducer idea, and the one call that would solve or help with all Sika hunting.
So what year was that exactly when you started making the Sika seducer?
My brain, 2004.
2004, okay. I thought it was earlier than that.
I think it was 2004. I had the idea and talked about it before that, but I didn't actually come out with, I think, the first one in 2004. So it's been a while.
Yeah.
Sweet 16.
Yeah, that's right.
It's been a while. I think it was the first Sika call out that I knew of or ever heard of one.
It's the only one I knew of until just recently, probably in the past 3 or 4 years that I can think of, where other people started making them as well.
I think there are 4 or 5 other people that have started producing or making some sort of a call, not necessarily seducer like, right. But it could do some of the calls really good and some not really good, and just like the seducer, you just couldn't make a call that would do it all perfectly,
right. I think, and we were talking about this before the show, there's a place for all of these calls in everybody's arsenal. It's not just the Sika seducers, the end all be all.
That's right.
But yours definitely takes care of from top to bottom, but it takes a lot more practice than what other ones call.
It does. Because it's an open reed call, it does take practice in doing that. So, if someone comes in here in the morning before it gets light and they're going hunting at Blackwater, just point them at the hoochie mama. That's and right. Say, here you go, because all you have to do is have control over your thumb. But for someone...
If not, we'll know they're out there.
That's right.
So anyways, all of the calls work. I haven't tried them all, but I'm sure all of the calls work, and some work in a particular area that another doesn't. And again, they don't all work, and some are not for everyone. Because there are people, even like myself. I can say myself now. I have a bone problem in my mouth, and the bone structure in my mouth has changed over all these years to where I used to be able to operate a diaphragm, and I was great for turkey hunting and using a diaphragm. And now the structure in my mouth is such I can't use a diaphragm anymore.
How about that?
So for those who use a diaphragm for calling cicadas, that works great, but it's not for everyone. Otherwise, I'd still be using the diaphragm.
That's right.
Not in place of the seducer, but I would be using it in certain situations.
Yeah. So we all know about the seducer, but before we get too far into that, let's talk about your earlier life. What was Doug doing when before he was a wildlife biologist? What are some of the things you enjoyed doing?
Before I was a wildlife biologist, well, running in school, I was certainly into playing baseball, but but I think like a lot of athletes that weren't the super athlete, the girls didn't draw them away from the baseball. I was able to be drawn away from that, so right. I was doing the typical chasing and stuff. But I enjoyed shooting. Yeah. My dad got me into the shooting sports very early, and it was competition shooting, and that's what he enjoyed doing, and he got me into that. And then as I became older, when I was old enough to hold a handgun, then he started grooming me in shooting a handgun.
Did you participate in competition shooting?
I did participate in competition and went right along with when other kids were going with their dads in a bowling league. Right. I was in a handgun shooting league.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And we traveled all over Pennsylvania shooting the whole winter season. And Dad was a law enforcement officer, and he was really big into competition shooting with handguns, and his department supported that. So that's how he was into it. That's how he got me into it. And I ended up when I got into the service, I found a unit when I moved from Kentucky, moved back here. I found a unit in Pennsylvania that was really big into competition shooting, and I was able to pick up the old handgun shooting, and I went back into competition in the Army, and continued that until we moved down here, and that was sort of the end of that, and I got out of the competition, but I still love to hunt.
Oh yeah,
with a handgun.
Well, that's fantastic. I had no idea you were into competition shooting.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Do you fish at all?
Love to fish.
Okay.
Love to fish. But Kaz, put your hand over your ears, Kaz.
Sorry, buddy. He's not going
to. Sorry, Kaz.
He didn't say anything about eating.
As much as I love to fish, I'm a largemouth bass fisherman, and still largemouth bass fish to this day. But I've never... Kaz, put your hands on your ears. I have never fished for Mr. Kaz over there, and I'm looking forward to it.
No, we're gonna put you on some really soon here. This spring. We'll change that.
Once you do, I'm retired. I'll be one of those that camps out.
There's plenty doing that already. That's for sure. Oh, but so you were into competition shooting when you were younger, and then you went off to college. Well, you said you were in the service before. Did you go into service before or after college?
It was towards the end of Vietnam,
okay.
And I was allowed to complete my degree. Once I completed my degree, within a week, I had a letter that says,
you belong to us now.
You are going to belong to us in 30 days. And I was fortunate. I would serve my country no matter what, even to this day.
Right.
But I was fortunate in that it was at the end of Vietnam, and I was able to get into an Army Reserve unit because I had thoughts of continuing to get my master's degree. And I thought maybe I could do that. I got into the Army Reserve, and I ended up spending 9 years. I was never able to, or didn't, I shouldn't say wasn't able. I didn't make the choice to go back and to get my master's degree. And I moved here and spent 9 years in the Army Reserve,
That's
National
fantastic.
Guard.
And then, so you finished your service with the National Guard, and then you became a wildlife biologist here on the Eastern Shore.
That I did.
And so, what year was that?
74.
74, a long time ago.
Long time, 34 and a half years,
And you
retired.
Did that until 2009, you said?
2009.
That's fantastic.
That should work out to about that.
Close enough.
And if it doesn't work, if it doesn't work out to 34 and a half
We're
years,
not fact checking.
That's right.
I can blame it on being 71.
Oh, that's fantastic. All right, so now we got a little bit more of your background here. Let's get right back to the seducer. So I think we've already had some comments here of people asking to hear it. So do you want to give everybody a quick blow on that?
Well, we can certainly do that. Let me push this away. What I'll do first here is the bugle, and that's what most people know about here in the Sika Seducer is the bugle. So I'm going to be hearing this through here, but I hope it sounds right. It sounds like it's cutting out.
Yeah, I think it might be a little bit too high pitched for it.
Okay.
That's
Let me try another one.
yeah. There it goes. Yeah, that was much better.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's a pure bugle, and of course for people that are out there and have hunted them a lot, they're saying, well, not all of them sound that pure and
Right.
high pitched and everything, and bugles are like voices with people, and some of them have the growling, that hollow sort of growl that goes into it before the bugle. And some of them have that same growling coming out of the bugle, and even it goes on.
Ex-wife growl.
And then sometimes you wonder whether that's your stomach growling.
Right.
Yeah, you can almost feel it if they're close. It's strange.
Yeah, but you really can. That hollow sound is kind of a neat sound. And one of the things I found out, especially now with everyone, it seems like everyone except me, enjoying going out and filming your own hunts. And I used to think a lot until I watched them bugling that it's not always the older stag that gives that low growl or that hollow sound when they're bugling, because now with all the videoing going on, there's good footage of Sikas out there bugling, and here's a little fork that's 2.5-year-old that just turned into a fork, and he's out there bugling with the best of them, and you're going, wow, that could have been sounded like, man, that could have been a nice mature 6 or an 8 or something, and here he is, just got into 2.5 years old, and he's bugling with the best of them. So they don't always sound
Right.
exactly like you think they're going to sound. But that growling is that's pretty neat.
When they're right on top of you, and it's funny when you can't see them, and they're right on top of you, you don't even know it yet, and then all of a sudden you hear that grumble right before they bugle.
Yeah.
It just makes the hair stand up on the back of your neck. It really does.
And then of course the growling, the real growling that we talk about, that all of us that like to hunt them know about is just the pure growling where there's
Right.
no bugle associated with, and they're just going through growling, and that's a completely unique sound, and I always say people ought to be making that with their voices,
Right.
because that's the best way to do it. And you can imagine over all these years with Sika Seducer, I've had loads of phone calls wanting to order Sika seducers and stuff. And does your Sika seducer make this sound and this sound? And I would say, well, not the growl. The growl you need to do with your own voice. And I had an acquaintance call one time, and he was talking about the growl. And he goes, Doug, you were in college, weren't you? And I said, yeah. And he goes, do you remember when you used to go out and drink too much? Do you remember people used to talk about hugging the white porcelain bus, meaning hanging on to?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, buddy.
Well, he said that's exactly what they sound like. And you know what?
That's
I
funny.
chuckled after I did that, and I thought, you are exactly right.
Everybody remembers those days, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
And for those maybe listening that have never heard one growling, you want me to do a growl?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a typical growl. Yep.
That's it. Plain and simple.
Were you hunting down Lakesville last week?
That was me. Oh no! Everyone blames me for being the Sika seducer. Now I'm the growler.
What's the weirdest sound that you've ever heard one make?
The weirdest sound. Heard one barking, an actual barking sound,
Yeah.
and I had to do that by using earphones. And I'm all the time experimenting or seeing what's going on and stuff. And I had my earphones that I could turn on and off when I was shooting, and it would cancel out. Well, I had those out one time, and I thought I'm gonna put those on, and listen. So I was out in the marsh and listening, and I turned those things on, and I heard sounds that I had never heard before. And I know they were Sika because they were right in front of me, and I'd take the earphones off real quick, and I couldn't hear anything, and I put the earphones back on, and I could hear them, and they were sounds that were they weren't discernible at a very far range.
How about that?
They were some really strange sound. I heard the barking sound, and that was one of the strangest I've ever heard. I've heard that, there's a lot of whines and whistles and stuff that you don't normally hear. How about you?
I had 2 years ago. I was hunting and I had one probably 300 yards from a bugle, and I bugled back to him, and I just or 3 tons, and I just sat there, and where I hunt, it's like a hole, and it's open, and it's frag mud is real heavy all the way around it.
Right.
And this one I heard him coming in, and he come in fast. I thought, man, this is gonna be good. And it apparently was a young one. I never got to see him, but he was whining like a dog trying to find a bird in Phragmites. I mean, just going around and around. It's like he knew he was there, but he couldn't find him. But he wouldn't step out in that hole. He was smart enough not to come out of that hole. But he was just going around just rooting almost and grunting. It was really weird to hear that. Only time I've ever heard it. But and sniffing. He was real sniffing hard.
That's funny.
How about that?
I've never heard that. Like almost like a dog just sniffing on a trail.
And then he stopped. Like that, this kept doing it. When I first heard it, I thought it was a dog, but it was clear it was a deer. But he was trying to find that stag.
That's wild stuff.
Well, sometime you enjoy that type of thing. Sometime get yourself a pair of earphones that you can adjust. And did I say microphone before?
I knew
earphones.
Yep.
The ones that
earphones that'll adjust the volume. Will adjust. Take those out.
I need
take
them
those
full
out
time.
and listen. Take those out and listen. Sometimes it's amazing.
It's actually Dad. He's kind of hard of hearing sometimes, and he was wearing those when we were out shooting one time.
Right.
And he turned his up a little bit too much, and it was funny because I scratched my jeans. He's like. And just jumped a little bit because he hadn't heard that in a couple of years. It's the first time he heard somebody like how that sound makes when you scratch your jeans.
Just see a parabolic dish out on my going back and forth like radar.
Right. But it is amazing about those adjustable headphones. What you really can hear with those things, it makes a big difference. Yeah. People don't realize. So what are some other inside tips that you can give us about Sika deer?
Inside tips.
I'll put you on the spot.
Well, I don't know is that I've ever had any inside tips. In fact, that's that's why I was always wanting to do seminars and just try to give out as much information
Right.
as I could, and that's why. And here, it's a little bit more publicity that maybe is good or not good at this time, but the Wildlife Advantage site on Facebook. If you go to that site, I've been writing an article probably once a week now for probably about the last 12 or 14 weeks, and there's a lot of good information on there that maybe. And I said in the original article for newbies as well as some of us old hands may learn something as well, because every time I go out in that marsh or I talk to someone else that's a Sika hunter, I keep my ears open because I learned something that I didn't know.
I think that's a key that a lot of hunters don't realize. That if you're not constantly learning, you're falling behind in the game.
That's right.
Well, and the deer learn.
That's exactly
yeah,
right.
exactly.
They learn too much, really.
Yeah.
And it's just like fishing. I mean, when you throw that same fish back so many times, he's going to know not to bite that hook anymore. That's just
Isn't that the truth?
Now, what about longevity?
Longevity. That is interesting, and we found out that Sika deer have a long life, a lot longer than whitetails, and we've been finding that out even more and more with the website that allows people to send in and have the teeth aged under according to the cementum annuli method of having them aged. And it turns out that we found out that many of them are very long-lived. The only other way we would know is if, like doing the research that we did and putting tags in their ears, and then someone shooting one of those animals 15 years later, instead of going, "Oh, I'm surprised we got a tag back 15 years later." Well, it turns out that that was one of the other ways that we would know that they were long-lived. But there's one other way, and of course, when we talked about research, there's a lot of research that is being done with Sikas now from the University of Delaware.
Okay.
And with the research that they're doing, they are out trapping Sikas to gain information as well. And this is kind of an interesting story. I know I've told it a few times, but the year after I retired in 2010, Brian Eiler, who is the deer biologist for the state of Maryland now with DNR, he sent me a letter, and he said, "Doug, I know you'd be interested in this." He said, we were out with the University of Delaware. We were trapping deer the other night, and we trapped a deer with one of your tags in its ear. And you had tagged it. Some people say they've heard different ages, but at that time, I had trapped it 17 years.
Wow.
Prior to that as a young Hein, and it had been killed. Not killed, but trapped, and it was 17 years later. And he said, "I thought you'd be interested to know that." And he said the other fact is, it was trapped within 3/4 of a mile from where you dropped the net on it, and that was up at Kerwin's Neck. And he said the most interesting thing, and I thought it was interesting too, was it was still lactating. It was actively.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know what's more amazing about that, the fact that she was that old, or that she got trapped twice.
Well, 17 years, you're going to forget about it.
Yeah.
So.
And that is a forgetful type thing, because in that trapping study, for those 5 years that we did that study, we trapped 258 Sikas. And the very interesting thing is that we trapped those at 7 different sites during those 5 years. and neither one of those 258 cichas were retrapped.
Wow.
And they were at the same 7 sites. So,
So
it's kind of interesting.
So how many of the tags got turned back in from people that shot them?
Up to when I retired, there were 60-some tags that were turned back in,
So less than half.
They were reward tags. I don't know if you can zoom in on that.
You can hold it, just hold it close there.
Close enough, but this is the kind of tag that is an ear tag that we put in the cica's ear.
Is that the one from that same hind?
No, it wasn't. This is just one that I happened to have a friend of mine sent this to me as a retirement present and said, "Here, I thought you'd like that as a retirement present." But anyways, this was the kind of tag that we put in. In your question,
you said that you only retrapped one out of all days. I was just curious how many people had shot them and turned the tags in.
60. And now I know what I was getting ready to say. There was a $20 reward for the information on this. So there was an incentive for people. They could make $20 if they just give us the information. We probably would have received some more information, but people thought they had to turn a tag in, and they didn't want to turn that bling in like the bling on a duck or a goose.
Well, it's just like that. You want to have it on your keys or on your call lanyard or anything like that.
Right.
So that's a neat piece of hardware there. That's definitely that's as much as the trophy as the antlers are. So
well, maybe so, but
when I worked for the school board, I had a van. Of course, we had South Dorchester K-8 school, and I always had a pair of nippers in my truck because in the spring the mowers always cause the road get run over, and I'd be riding down the road and see that little tag and jump out of the truck, chop, get my tag, get back in the truck. They're like, "What the heck are you doing? Get my tag, man!" But it was amazing where some of them came from.
Oh yeah,
so funny.
Oh
funny.
Yeah, but so you're talking about the lifespan of them. What else can you say? I remember one question I wanted to ask you. That 17-year-old Hein, what was her teeth like? I've always wondered that. I wanted to ask you that. What was her? Do you know what her teeth were?
Her teeth were completely worn down.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
But
just like one would think.
Yeah. So. Is that the oldest documented cicadeer that we know of?
No, I think Brian actually told me there was one that was 21.
Wow.
That's where you might have heard the number 21. That's
amazing. How about stags? Are they comparable or not as far as
lifespan?
I don't know if I have any statistics to go along with that. Brian hadn't told me anything about stags as to whether stags were that
right. So we don't know if there's any difference in the lifespan between the Hines and the stags.
I would assume that they're probably similar in that some of the reason that they live longer is simply because of where they live and the difficulty in hunting them.
Before Kaz forgets, if you want this sticker, make sure you put in the comments, "I want that sticker," and the first one who says it gets a sticker.
There you go.
So,
hey, I thought of something that a lot of people ask, and I see a lot of times really misquoted. They want to know the antler development going along with years, and of course you got your 6-month-old deer that may have a button, or you may not even see a button on the stag for a 6-month-old. But once they turn 1.5 years, they're spikes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that doesn't mean they can't be a spike and get longer.
Right.
But it means they're a spike, and at 2.5 years old, the majority of them start to have branch antlers. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to have automatically a 6-point,
right,
or automatically an 8, but they're going to start to branch, and sometimes you'll have the 4s. For those of you who hunt, you may see the the little main beams that are like 7 or 8 inches, and they may have the start of a brow tine or a G1, and then they may have the start or not even the start of another G2.
It's
to
funny.
complete the 6.
One of my friends, I can't remember, it was about 3 or 4 years ago, shot. He thought it was a 4, but it ended up being just a spike. But it was a 10-inch tall spike with neither didn't have any eye guards and neither split at the top at all. But it was. I think he want to say it was around 10 inches.
And that has to do with genetics and food and other factors, just like for a whitetail, other factors take charge on that point. So to where, in fact, it's pretty neat. I've always wanted to, and I never have shot one of those, what I would call a gigantic 4.
Right.
And they look so gigantic because they have the brow tine coming up, and then they have this large expanse of 13. I'm sure you've seen some 14-inch main beams and a brow tine, and that's it.
And no split at the top.
And they just look huge.
Perfect example of that is in the store in Hooper's Island.
Yes.
They've got one hanging on the back wall. And Joey and I were down there last week. Joey said, I'd love to get one of them 4s like that. there was on Delmarva's site last week was a lady shot a 4-pointer, and his brow tines were probably 3.5 inches, and his main beams were like an inch.
Yeah,
right.
It looked just like almost like a perfect Y.
Yeah, like somebody turned his rack around.
Yeah.
But if you looked at that, some of these big spikes that we're talking about and 4-pointers and the one you're talking about, those deer are probably mature deer. They're probably over 2.5, 3.5, 4.5. They just happen. That's what the genetics did with the growth of that antler, because I think I saw that one, and it looked like it was had some fairly good mass to it. It's just that it was small.
Yeah, almost looked like it was in velvet. It was still, it was down in the brown.
And then of course you can look at the mass really at the pedestal, and they really get big around. And of course that's a mature stag, no matter what's up here.
Right.
It's a mature stag.
So once you get past probably 3 or 4 years old, do you think is there any continued correlations in the size of the rack there at all?
I think you have to get even a little bit further past that, and probably your best antlers are probably 5.5, 6.5. They've really gotten mature,
right?
And they may vary a little bit each year. We've identified some on camera that we know is the same animal, yet they might have the start of an 8, and then the next year
it's not there.
And then a few years later it might be there, and even a good size as far as 8. So it all has to do with not only genetics but food and habitat, and
it can gain a lot in 1 year,
and
too.
age.
Oh, yeah.
They really can. They can blow up just like a whitetail.
I shot a 6 early, like September 25th this year. And I have some pictures of him in last year, and he's nowhere near the same deer.
Right.
You can tell, but
Now, do you think that's more because of diet, or do you think that's more genetics and just him coming of age? Do you think?
Don't know, but his corn has anything to do with it.
I
All
think,
12 pointers.
I think that has more to do with it.
The diet, you think the diet does?
Yeah,
I seem to agree with you, but genetics, like you said, has a big part in the predisposition of it, but the diet really amplifies it.
The diet can change it back and forth, and I know a lot of people are starting to go to protein pellets and using a lot of protein, especially in the summertime.
Mm-hmm.
And I really do think that has an effect on antler size, of course, on body size too, but providing them with protein from March through July or August, and then coming back on corn. Plus, a lot of people now are buying property and managing forsythas. Right. And where you can manage forsythas by utilizing food plots and different plants in food plots, along with the corn and along with the pellets.
Well,
and everything.
I've said for a long time when when the Sitka deer got on the other side of Route 50, up around Vienna. Rosedale and all are some of the biggest deer that have ever been shot on the eastern shore, have been shot right up from that area.
Right.
And you got gazillions of swamp oaks, and it's all fresh water.
Yeah.
And there's crops available to them, and
exactly.
you're going to get some bigger deer, and they are. They're getting some big deer up around Vienna.
That was going to be my next question: is how much do you think that the higher ground does to affect their size of the deer and the rack?
Well, I think it puts them in a place where they get some different types of food, and that higher ground is capable of producing food plots that you don't have in the marsh.
That definitely gives them more nutrition.
You know, so you have they have more to feed on that can have to do with that antler size and body size.
Good.
And you know, a lot of the record deer that we're measuring now up in the 70s, 74, 75, 76, 77, a lot of those super nice deer are Wacomico deer.
That's what I was just about to say. Yep.
Coming off of farms.
Yep.
And they're also deer that are north of 50.
Yep.
And they're getting more into farm country. They still love the wetlands, but they're the flooded, forested wetlands, and not necessarily that pure marsh.
Right. I was literally just about to say that I've noticed over the past probably 3 or 4 years, if you look on the Delmarva Sitka site, all of your bigger Sitkas seem to come from Wacomico County now. We're still Dorchester's definitely still the heart of Sitka country. But if you want those monsters, they seem to be coming from Wacomico here lately.
And it just happens to be that way. And I know of the marshes aren't as expansive as they go down the Nanticoke, and I think there's a lot more interaction and properties that go along there that have more upland associated with the marshland.
Water's fresher too.
Water's fresher.
To get freshwater plants.
And I think that all has to do with bigger bodies, bigger animals.
It's definitely 100% noticeable in the size of the deer when you look at the pictures over the years. So the more they have spread into that, like you said, the fresher waters and the higher ground, it's definitely changing their body types and the styles and everything. Yeah. It's 100% played a part in their genetics.
Exactly.
So.
8 points is the biggest that I've ever seen. I've never seen one. I've seen pictures of. Is anybody ever? Do you know I've ever shot one bigger than that?
I've never heard of one, and of course, we ran checking stations for all those years before we stopped actually operating checking stations. We still had to get a quota of animals, and we did that by going to coolers, freezers, taxidermists, places like that we could actually put hands on the deer. And in all of those, I've never seen more than an 8. I've been an official measurer for years and years and years, and have never laid my hands on more than an 8. And those, you know, so I always ask about, and I said this before, about the length of the main beam. And there were all the time people, you know, it's sort of like fish, probably like Kaz over there, you know, that snake head was this big, and it's the same sometimes where people, you know,
the angle of the picture
a little bit bigger, or especially now with the angle of the picture, that can change that size. And the point I was getting ready to make is I have officially measured only 2 Sikas that have had 16-inch main beam.
Wow, that's a big.
Both
deer.
of them were over 16 inches, but that's
a big
long
stag.
Main beam.
It's going to be Kaz's new Facebook profile.
Oh, that's funny. So how many 8s have you seen over the years? Because I know a lot of people probably up until about 5 or 6 years ago really treated 8s like they were just a myth. I mean, you'd hear about them almost like in whispers in the shadows, but they've been around for a while.
And still they've been around, and still they're sort of a myth. But of course, in measuring a true 8 would be a point is considered only a point if it's an inch long.
Okay.
And I think a lot of people, in calling something an 8, and I probably did it myself as far as Sika deer go, if it had a point coming out that
Right.
and it may not have been an inch long, everyone called it an 8.
Yeah, you're gonna give it a little leeway there.
But to answer your question, I've probably only seen less than 10.
Yeah, I was about to say probably a handful. Yeah.
And that's a lot of years. That's,
yeah.
That's 40, 50 some years.
That's crazy.
So eights aren't a dime a dozen. that's for
Absolutely not.
sure.
And, you know, it's just like you said, 15 inches. You know, it's the same way with that inch. Might look like an inch, but an inch is an inch.
Right. But-
So one of the questions we had was, people talk about subspecies of the sika. Do we have different subspecies here, or is it all the same? Or
There are different subspecies, but the subspecies that are talked about are the subspecies that occur through the world.
right?
And there have been reported about 14 subspecies. But what I've seen recently on some of the sites are some people that are suggesting that the Assateague sika is different than the Dorchester sika, and it's according to all DNR records, it's not. They all came from the
From James Allen.
same guy that was associated with it, Clement Henry, a man that lived in Cambridge, Clement Henry, and it was a founder population of 6 deer, and he released them, and they were released on James Island, and of course they came across. I have an interesting story about that if
Absolutely.
we have time.
Oh, we've got time.
The story goes on, and for all of these years that I've been telling the history and how a man in Berlin, Dr. Charles Laws, bought some sika deer from a man in Cambridge that we supposed was Clement Henry. We knew about that, and we knew we had heard that this man, Dr. Charles Laws, had them. And somehow Ocean City got associated with Charles Laws and with those deer. And then associated with that is, how did they get on Assateague Island? And one of the stories was that the Boy Scouts released them on
That's what I heard.
Assateague Island. And could never... You know, there weren't investigative reporters, and I guess that would be pretty interesting, but there weren't investigative reporters to say, you know, did Boy Scouts really release them in the 1920s on Assateague Island? Well, I don't know where I read it, but within the last 6 months, someone posted, and it seemed like a logical post with some background information, but this person had read a story where there was an interview, and it even named a Boy Scout by the last name Mumford. And it turns out this interview in 1992 with this Mumford fella, who was a Boy Scout in that area, and it said, and here was the story. It's like, who was the guy that said, and now the rest of the story?
Paul Harvey.
Oh,
Paul Harvey. Well, here's the first time I've heard anything that would lend any credence to the Boy Scouts releasing them, and that was, this Boy Scout told the story that they, as a Boy Scout troop, had bought some sika deer and put them in a corral underneath a pier at Ocean City, and they were charging people a fee to come and look at these wild sika deer. And people would do that, and he tells the story that the objective of that was for the Boy Scouts to make enough money that they could go on a troop Boy Scout trip.
How about that?
They went on this troop Boy Scout trip. When they came back, Ocean City season was over, and the Boy Scout troop found out that they couldn't fund the cost of feeding these Sika deer anymore. So the Boy Scout troop took these deer and released them into the wild at Assateague.
That's basically what I'd heard.
And I wish I knew where that story came from. It's not please, anyone, it's not my story. I didn't make it up.
Right.
But it's not my story. Whoever posted that, thanks. It was, if that's a true story, that really pulls together the thing about the Boy Scouts released them on Assateague.
Connects the dots for everybody.
Yeah,
So
kind of neat. It made me smile.
Oh yeah, that's exactly right.
Problem has been so long; these Boy Scouts are old man now.
Yeah.
That's right.
But it's funny because, like you said, they're the same deer from Dorchester County, but just over the years through the different diet and the different landscape and that ocean water instead of the marsh water
Right.
or the fresh water in the north part of the county, it just changes.
Darwin effect.
Yeah, exactly right.
They always wetlands were always a part of wherever those deer were, and whether it be the wetlands at Assateague, or the wetlands in Dorchester, or the wetlands in Sussex County, as the deer made their way up, they sort of stayed associated with the river systems going up into Sussex County and stuff, and even where they moved in Somerset County, they stayed in association with that.
It's kind of like pigs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they don't have water, they're not happy.
But if you read the story that I wrote about Yakushima Island, it seems totally wrong that our subspecies could be the Yakushima subspecies, because when you read about the island, this is a 6,200 foot elevation island, and it had the most rainfall of any Japanese island that there were. And you wonder, well, these deer are living in the mountains and stuff. And where are the mountains in Dorchester County and stuff? But the thing...
You might have had Bueller for that.
But the thing that's part and parcel of all of that, whether they were 6,200 feet or whether they were in Dorchester County, part and parcel to all of that there were wetlands there. And those deer, that's why I used to say they like to keep their feet wet. Yeah. Not because they technically like to keep their feet wet, but that was the type of habitat
Let them hide.
they liked.
It's funny because, I mean, the Sika deer, they're an Asian, originated from the Asian area. Same with the snakeheads too. And it's funny how those Asian species have come to Dorchester and really thrived here.
Phragmitis?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like the Asian invasion, man.
Yeah.
If Kaz was here, I'd ask him, do snakeheads like to keep their feet wet?
Well,
like get their fins wet.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you make the joke there, but I mean, they move when it's in monsoon. I mean, that's how they spread in Asia, was during monsoon season, and they do the same thing here when you get a heavy rain. When it's, I mean, that's how they really spread throughout to the different rivers and stuff. And
I mean, the Sika deer are in very shallow,
Sure,
but wet areas, and the snakeheads are not much difference. They'll go in 5, 6 inches of water, and especially when it's hot outside, because when they're spawning, because there's no predators, there's nothing in there unless it's outside the water that's gonna mess with them.
Right. Well, I have a friend that rides a bicycle back one of the roads to get to his Sika hunting area, and he was telling me if there was a lot of water running over the road, and he had to stop his bicycle, and he watched two or three snakeheads go over the road.
That's a common occurrence when you get a real high tide down here.
Right.
But if you don't mind, we've got a couple of questions here we can rapid fire before
we'll give it a try.
Okay, let's see.
No gotcha questions.
No gotchas.
Okay.
No gotchas. One person wants to know, what's the difference between a regular mew and a mew and estrus, if there is any difference?
Sometimes people have talked about a mew and estrus, and the only thing I could say to that was that it seems like the mew and estrus seems to be drawn out a lot whinier than just a regular mew.
So okay, I mean,
I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense.
I could probably make some sort of a sound here to give you that.
Yeah, definitely give it a shot. So that way you can really explain the difference there. People can hear the difference.
We try to use one of these little ones that won't make a lot of noise. This is something I'm experimenting with. It's a secret, so I can't let you see it.
Prototype.
Let me try to make a mew here, and then I'll make some mews that I think are in estrus.
There you go.
So those are typical mews, and then some of those drawn out ones. And the only reason I say in estrus is because, like you've probably been sitting above a frag stand or something, and you can catch you hear them splish splashing, and the stags are chasing.
Oh yeah.
And you can hear the Hines making these mews, and they're running, and the stag's chasing right behind. And I think I hear more, and you might say, nah, I don't, or I do, but I think I hear more of that long, drawn out, whiny mew whenever they're being chased.
Generally, in the rut is the only time I hear the long mews.
Yep.
Usually, any other time they're very short.
Right.
You know.
Right. They're just a
And
little.
it's generally like a young one will be calling and the mother answer, or they're
Right.
just communicating.
Right. Exactly. Just like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So the next question I got here is coyotes. What do you think the coyotes have done as far as this affecting the second population?
I don't have any of the data to get from someone that would collect data, maybe like Blackwater, that may have data on that type of thing. But I would certainly coyotes are a predator of cichas, and the cichas are so small when they're young, especially, that it is extremely easy for a coyote to nab a cicha. Maybe not as easy a full-grown cicha or anything like that, but when you're talking about the little, what we used to call one-handers, the 10-pounders, 15-pounders, 20-pounders,
Size of a big raccoon.
Yeah, exactly.
easy, and I think it's definitely taking a toll. How much of a toll?
It's hard to tell. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it probably has a little bit to do with how many coyotes I don't know if they have a count of or any idea how many there are.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That'd be a really good question to
And
ask.
I haven't talked to Marcia. They may be doing some sort of research
Right.
with trying to find out coyote populations. I don't know.
Have you ever seen an interbred of Sitka and whitetail?
No, definitely not. I don't think it is able to happen. People have said they have, but I think it's impossible.
What are your thoughts on the habitat deterioration due to saltwater intrusion?
Well, it has certainly caused some habitat deterioration, but and I'm not sure there again if there's any data at Blackwater to say whether their Sika population is increasing or decreasing.
Right.
But it may not not be making a difference if the population is increasing, of course.
That's accessibility.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, the other thing you have to think about is what that causes, or what something like a nutria cause could make a different type of habitat,
Right.
to where you're having maybe some submerged aquatics that are growing now in place where that didn't. And if submerged aquatics do happen to be growing where they weren't before, those Sika certainly will dunk ahead to get into submerged aquatics. And I'm sure a lot of people have seen some of the flats, and have seen some of the Sikas walking along there with their head in the water, and that's what they're after. They're eating submerged aquatics.
Back in the Blackwater, there's some large stands of trees that a few years ago were green.
Exactly.
And now I remember when Marsh and I went back there, I was showing her this one particular spot, and it's huge. I mean, it's thousands of trees. And she said, wow. I said, yeah, so elevation is directly related to devastation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It is, and it's a couple inches is maybe, I mean, you're talking about
Right.
Dorchester County, 80% of Dorchester County is 2 feet above sea level. 2 inches is a
Right.
big deal.
And I'm definitely not going to tell the story, but a friend and I, we used to hunt at a particular property 20 years ago here in Dorchester. And he called me up one time and said, let's have a reunion hunt. You and I, the 2 old guides there and stuff, let's have a reunion hunt and go back and hunt that area. So we went back to that area and we scouted and walked all the way back to that favored area that we used to hunt. We couldn't find a tree to climb
How
up
about that?
because
Isn't that amazing?
they were gone.
Yeah, we have just one little island on one of the properties that I hunt, and 5 years ago it was probably 1.5 acres, and there's like 15 trees left alive on it,
Right.
and only like 20 to full trees standing.
All right. Last question. This one's actually from Kaz himself.
Uh-oh.
So, Kaz wants to know: do siccas lose their horns every year, just like whitetail do?
Yes.
Plain and simple. That's an easy one.
That was plain and simple.
That's right. Well, we're running at an hour here now, guys. I think so. Gary, you got any one more or anything like that?
No, I'm sorry. This has been great.
This has been an excellent episode. Doug, do you think there's anything else you want to cover?
You have 3 or 4 more hours?
We can definitely sit here and talk for that long for sure. There's always more stuff to go over.
I will give you just one more. Kaz asked me to show you that picture.
That's nice.
That's
a true 8-pointer. It looks like those G3s are definitely an inch long. It looks like.
He disappeared. Yeah, had him on camera for 3 or 4 years, and he's just I don't know where he went, or he's fell back one or the other. But
maybe
Yeah.
I don't see him anymore. Yeah,
That's a shame.
found a better place to hide.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Doug, we certainly thank you for coming on this week, man. It's been a great show. We appreciate you coming
Been
down.
awesome.
Absolutely.
I enjoyed it.
Yep.
Invite me back.
Yeah, oh, yeah, we'll
can
definitely have you
we
back.
can take up some of these other.
That's right. We didn't even get to all your talking points,
Yeah.
but no, we will definitely have you back on for sure. It's been
All
a great
right.
great show.
And I miss Kaz.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We've got Kaz Jr. over here, so
Got catfish.
yeah.
My wife asked me
Subspecies.
my wife asked me what we would eat tonight, and I said I know Kaz will give me a bushel of oysters, and he'll have some of those real heavy doggone crabs and everything. Now I'll have to stop at Food Line on the way back.
Get cheesesteak downstairs.
That's right. Yeah. We can take care of your food. You don't have to worry about that.
All right. All right.
Well, guys, I have to apologize. Kaz isn't here to sing this week, so Kaz, you want to sing for us real quick? No, it's okay. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.